Hi. Okay, I'm jumping back on because I have been diving in to Braiding Sweetgrass, and there were just a couple of overlaps with some things that I've been thinking and chewing on lately. So I wanted to share kind of what's been coming up for me as I've kind of gone through like the preface and the intro. Just because last night when I did my little book haul, I didn't have like any little nuggets to share, and now I have a couple. So first I'll say that since coming back from Europe, and on my trip in Europe, community was really on my mind. That was one of the big themes and nuggets that stood out to me during my time, of just things that are different, things that are profoundly and notably different between how it seems life is here in the States, at least in my experience, compared to how life may be in the places that I visited on my trip, which were Switzerland, Amsterdam, Hamburg, London, and Ireland. Again, I spent 3 weeks, and I was kind of in this travel and almost like vacation mindset. So of course, these insights are limited and anecdotal. So take them with that grain of salt and that packaging. But I really noticed a profound difference in how folks interact and spend time together. One example would be, and I shared a little bit of this on one of my Instagram pages. When I was in Hamburg, I had left my Airbnb and I went out for a walk, and there was this coffee shop just right on the corner of where I was staying, and people were just out and about visiting. And there was a young group of folks around my age, maybe a little bit younger, just playing cards. And I love a card game. I grew up playing cards with my family, just at home at the dinner table. But I've never experienced playing cards out with friends a day in my life with friends or people I don't know. It's just never been part of my experience or something I've ever even witnessed in the States. I have seen from time to time like certain like barcades in specific places that might have like board games and things like that, like a specific like curated type vibe. But I don't know, it's much more like, I don't know, people are out and about like doing their own thing. Maybe like, I don't know, people are kind of like out and about to be like seen in a way and visit with the specific people they're out with, and just chat or drink and eat and like consume. And it's less about like connecting over like a shared activity, if that makes sense. I guess it's almost this notion of like touching on like third places and like having something to like do together. It's just not as like welcome, or like not necessarily welcome, but like it's not part of our like culture and like the fabric of our society here, in my experience. And then like throughout walking around Hamburg, just like people are just like out doing their thing, like visiting, and like it just seemed less orchestrated than my experiences in the States, of like we're all a bit more, in my experience, in our like siloed paths of, okay, like I have my workload, I have my things going on, and then I have like maybe my appointments or my obligations of maybe I'm going to the gym, or I have like these gym classes, or I need to go do these returns, or I don't know, I have X, Y, and Z thing going on. Maybe I have like these plans with friends, but like it's these friends at these time points. It's less open and flexible and just out visiting and connecting, if that makes any sense. yeah, I don't know. So I wanted to share that of like community's been on my mind a lot since the trip. And so it's been on my mind of what can I do to cultivate community and create like more of what I'm noticing as lacking in my life. And so the two things that I'm exploring or have explored, this past week I hosted just like a cozy little closet swap get together at my place. I had cleaned out my closet recently and just invited a handful of my friends over to see like, hey, does anybody want any of this stuff before I go and donate? And also if any of you have things that you are not using anymore that you might like to see if anybody else wants, please like feel free to bring it. And at the end of the night, I will happily gather everything up and find like a local women's shelter or somewhere where I can donate the items to. And it was a beautiful gathering. Like, I think it seemed just profound to me that we all have so much collectively, but there's this like, it doesn't come naturally to think of doing something like that. It's much more natural to think of like, oh, it's a new season, like it's fall, it's winter, like it's Chicago, it's getting cold, like let me go buy X, Y, and Z new thing. Rather than, oh my goodness gracious, like I had so many clothes, so many things collectively, like just my own things that I brought together. And then from the group, we had so much. And I think even beyond materially, like the things we've gathered, like thinking broadly, like we have so much, like skills, just in general. And like, I'm just thinking like, how do we better like leverage, like how do we lean on each other? How do we support each other? I don't know, I don't have the answers for all this, but I'm just playing, I'm exploring, I'm dabbling. But it was a really beautiful dabble in that. And I think from what I heard, everyone felt very well connected, and it was a lovely, like cozy gathering. And yeah, I'll share some photos from the evening. But yeah, it was very cool. I got some wonderful like new things, like brand new for me, and just completely like free from my friends and my connections, and get to breathe new life into the items. And this little cardigan is one of those items, and I'm loving green lately, so just so grateful for this. I actually don't know exactly who it's from, but whoever it's from, thank you. And it feels good to be in this, and it feels good to repurpose. So yeah, reciprocity is on my mind, and that is one of the things that came up as I was starting to dive into braiding sweetgrass. So I just wanted to share a few of the things that came up. Give me a moment. So I love the way that she throughout the book so far, and I think it will continue, likens a lot of what she's describing to nature and to plants. And as I'm going, I'm learning about like different plants and like what different things are. So one of the first examples, she talks about rhizomes, which are horizontal underground stems that function for plant storage and asexual reproduction. And so she says, sweetgrass does not propagate by windblown seed, but by rhizomes, slender figures of underground stem that wind their way through the soil, unseen until they rise up and bloom. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Rarely do they dominate a meadow. Rather, they come gently, persistently, to stand beside the other bigger plants. They delight me with their subversive infiltration of the status quo. All on their own, they find their way to new places, where their shine and seductive fragrance beckons. tugging at the edge of consciousness, like a memory of something you once knew and want to find again. Okay, poetic, like gorgeous. It stops you, calls you to slow down and see the meadow with new eyes. Look what was waiting for you. All you needed to do was pay attention. Dropping to your knees, you can't help but sigh in recognition of the gift that was there all along. Like, that's beautiful. And she talks about how this book has kind of moved underground like a network of rhizomes, largely unnoticed at first until like a patch at the edge of my pond. You see it blooming everywhere. Really lovely. And she talks about how she was asked, like, why did she write this book? And at first the question paralyzed her. She felt she was supposed to have an answer. But the truth was that she wrote it because she couldn't help herself. There were plant stories wanting to be told, and they forced their way up through the ground and down her arm with motive force of trillium, which is a plant with a solitary 3-petaled flower above a whorl of 3 leaves, pushing through soil. She had the honor and responsibility of holding the pen. I'm profoundly grateful for the privilege of carrying a message from the plants so that they can do their work. She wrote from the belief that since plants are medicines, so too could their stories be healing. I'm sorry, like, that is so beautiful. And a reflection from someone else on the book says, a great longing is upon us to live again in a world made of gifts. Wow. She goes on to speak of reciprocity between people and plants, and speaks to how we're told that the reason our ancestors held so tightly to these teachings was that the worldview the settlers tried to obliterate would one day be needed by all beings. She says, coupled to the impulse to share is the mandate to protect, and that indigenous knowledge has too often been appropriated by its abductors. So the gift of knowledge must be tightly bound to responsibility for that knowledge. If indigenous wisdom could be medicine for a broken relationship with the earth, the moral obligation to share the healing must be accompanied by a prescription to avoid misuse. She hoped always to inspire an authentic revitalization of relationship with the land, not by borrowing it from someone else, but by finding your roots and remembering how to grow your own. That's beautiful. She said she wrote with the intention to provide an antidote for what conservation biologists have termed plant blindness, which is the lack of public awareness of the significance of plants to ecosystem function and the attendant deficiency in policy, scientific knowledge, and conservation funding that follows. Plant blindness and its relative, species loneliness, impedes the recognition of the green world as a garden of gifts. The cycle flows from attention to gift, to gratitude, to reciprocity. It starts with seeing. She says that she wrote from a sense of reciprocity, that in return for the privilege of spending her personal and professional life listening to plants, that she might share their teachings with those who didn't even know that they had something to say. I think the last thing I'll share from my reflection so far is the notion that we're in a dark time, in a time filled with light, and we remember the oft used words of resistance. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Like, okay. So I just wanted to share that. And yeah, I definitely have had my own case of plant blindness, and yeah, more and more in the last several years am on my own journey to better understand plants. And you know, I have a couple of my own house plants, always wary and doing my best to try to have ones that are safe for cats. I have this basil that's a little bit trim right now because I just had I had some pasta this last week that I used it for, but yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful process to be able to tend to it and then have it tend to me, and be able to use it and eat it. It's just gorgeous. And so, yeah, I think there's so much here, and I'm very much on my journey of really deeply trying to connect with myself, connect with others, and connect with the earth. And I think these things are really important. I think they're really important. So I just wanted to share. But I hope you all have a lovely day, and curious to know your thoughts and kind of where you are in your journey. Any favorite plants, any favorite ways you are connecting with the earth, and if you've read this book, if you've heard about this book. Yeah. Bye.